Hey everybody. So our good friend, the Scott S1642 is back in the shop today for a different issue. We're not having any engine issues or tune-ups to do. Have some transmission problems. So I'll show you what I was told about this unit. So it was in use this weekend, and the owner tried to make it go, with the lever that's all the way back next to the seat, and it was going and then stopped. So I noticed the belt, transmission belt, was hanging off of the pulleys. I did cut it because it was coming apart anyway, but the belt is stuck. Yeah, so at the very least we're gonna need a belt. You guys probably can't see that, but the back of the transmission looked a bit oily to me. So I don't know if there's something going on there or if it's just a belt. But regardless, we're obviously going to put a belt on it. Also going to do, assuming there's no other issues that would warrant a further deep dive, I'm going to do an input shaft kit on this transmission, because I remember when I serviced it last time, that input shaft was feeling kind of loosey-goosey. What happens on there is the splines just loosen up over the years, and then engine tries to spin the input shaft, but it can't because there's no splines left on it. So we're going to do that too. Hopefully there's nothing else wrong with it. We can just call it a day there, but let's start by taking the deck off so we can get to the transmission. Let's start by lowering the deck down to its lowest setting. This would give us more clearance there. And there's a bunch of cotter pins that hold this thing in place. See if I can get you a good look at them. Here's one of them right here. Just throwing in a magnetic parts bin. There should be a washer on there too. Got the exact same thing on the other side. You guys probably won't be able to see it, but up here, where my finger is, there's a pin, and there's a cotter pin on that one as well. Same thing on both sides. Got to remove those. Here's the pin. I'll go do the same thing on the other side. These pins should slide right out once you take those cotter pins off. You may have to jiggle the deck a little bit. Yep, here comes this one. The deck should drop. Watch your fingers. Okay, there's one final pin on the belt tensioner for the deck. I'll see if I can get you a shot of it. You guys probably can't see, but it's this thing right here, this threaded rod. So pull the pin out, you see the adjuster just drop down. Starting to get a little more insight as to what's going on. You can see here the deck belt is wrapped around the crankshaft here, or a piece of it. Jeez, what the heck happened here? Yeah, the belt was broken anyway, so I didn't do any harm cutting it. All right, so now we'll get the deck belt off so we can get the deck out of the way. Getting it around this adjuster here. Off the crank pulley. That should do it. All right, the deck should be free. Now is a great time to check the condition of your idler pulleys and whatnot. If any of them are in poor shape, now is a great time to replace them. I'm just lifting the tractor up off the ground. I'm going to put a jack stand on either side just to give us some room to work. This thing is not super heavy, so we're not super concerned here, but we don't want it dropping on us nonetheless. Let's see how that does. All right, I'll do. Those jack stands are rated for 3 tons, so I'm sure we'll be just fine. I cheated a little bit and went underneath and looked, and it looks like we have a bad idler. It's just noisy. It doesn't seem to be causing any problems. It's not loose or anything. But more concerning is the input shaft in the transmission, as I suspected. It's very loose and wobbly. I'm guessing that the belt just jumped off and shredded itself. So let's take the tire off, or tires. Sometimes these come off easily, sometimes they don't. Advice is to use a heat gun if you can't get them off. It softens them up. I think we're gonna have to do that on this one. This one's pretty rock hard. Just gonna use this heat gun to warm up that boot a bit. There we go. And we'll use a screwdriver and get this E-clip off. And this washer. This seems kind of wet. I wonder why this is so wet. Interesting. See if the other side's like it. Wonder if maybe we have an axle seal that's going bad. All right, I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. Yeah, it was wet on the other side too. It's probably just fluid film that I put on there last time I did this work. Yeah, it sure looks like it. Got one wheel. I'll grab the other one from the other side. This thing needs a new set of sneakers. All right, now the fun part, getting the transmission out. So there's a bolt and nut here, here. There's a bracket down here. Basically the same thing on the other side, but on this side you also have this linkage here. I believe there's also going to, that's for the shifter. I believe there's also going to be a parking brake. And I think that is, yeah, that's on the other side. So we'll get to that in a minute. So let's start by removing this. Or not. Got to stick a backup wrench on that one. I'm trying to remember how I did this last time. I feel like this was super easy. I was able to get a 7/16 midget wrench in the back here to hold it. Let's see if that works. That did it. Okay, that's one. Let's go to the other side and disconnect the parking brake before we go unbolting the trans. Actually, no, we can undo some stuff here, loosen things up at least. So these are either 12s or 1/2 inch. I'm using 1/2 inch. But they're probably 12s. All right, as I push the pedal here, you can see the brake mechanism work. I think the path of least resistance here to remove that is just to remove that pin. Just a little cotter pin. Get a pair of needle nose pliers, we'll bend that in and take it out. we go. Take that washer off. We'll just push that out of there. Beautiful. So all of our linkages should be disconnected now. It should just be a matter of removing the bolts to take the transmission out. The other side's all loose already. Grab the wrong bolt there. See the transmission dropping. I want this thing to come down in a controlled manner. It's not super heavy, it's also not super light, so I want to be sane about it. Let's take out this front bracket bolt up here. There we go. She's coming. All right, there's only 2 loosely held bolts holding in the whole transmission now, so let's go ahead and undo those and hope for the best here. Again, it's not super heavy. Actually, you know what? Let me do this. Work smart, not hard. I got this floor jack sitting right next to me. Let's use that. Re-secure this temporarily. As you get older, you have to learn to use your brain rather than your muscles. Just not worth messing up your back over. Undo the other side and we'll lower it down. Okay, I'm holding it with one hand and we'll just lower the jack. You guys can probably see better than I can at this point. I think that did it. Stay. Oh, I forgot to do a linkage on the top. My bad. It's the linkage that disconnects, or I guess relieves pressure so you can this is what relieves pressure so you can move the thing. Forgot to disconnect that. Where the heck does that go? Yeah, it goes over here. That thing really does not want to come out. Let's see if we can remove the transmission with it still hooked up. Hopefully not break anything. The whole back of the tractor is moving though. Don't really want that. Yeah, there's a spring washer on that thing on the bottom. It's not going to come off very easily. I don't remember having this problem the last time I pulled this transmission. Kind of strange. Let's just do what we can. There we go. That was fun. Transmission should be totally free now. I think I'll slide it forward off the jack. Maybe. Can I pull it back at all? Oh wow, look at that. Just clears, sort of. All right, that's that. That's what she looks like. And I think this is our problem. See how loose that is? I don't think it should do that. You can actually see, if you look at the fan blades, it's been rubbing this this hydraulic relief lever here. Let's get it up on the bench. Okay, got it up on the bench. Blew it off with some compressed air. Let's take this pulley off. Pulley and fan assembly. A little snap ring here. A tiny snap ring. There we go. Make sure you drop everything, that's important. Yeah, there's definitely some wear on this input shaft. Hard to tell if there's any wear on this pulley, but I can definitely feel it with my fingers here. Doesn't matter though, I ordered a new input shaft kit, new pulley, and new fan. While we're in here, I figured we'd do the whole thing. This should come off too, right? So for now, as we're still waiting on parts, I think what we'll do is we'll just drain the oil out because it's here. Good opportunity to do it. And then we'll wait for the parts. So to drain the oil, you got to take this plug off right here. And if memory serves, that just comes off with a screwdriver. Just like that. Take Mr. Spring out. And then we can start by dumping this into a bucket. I find that's the easiest. I think there's a screen in here too you have to also take out. So we just upend it. You can let it sit there for a little bit. And this is what we're dealing with. A little bit of glitter in there. And I didn't service this that long ago. Fill for life. Yeah, right. All right, it's been about, well, maybe about a week later. I think all of our parts have arrived. We got a new fan. I'll leave links to all these parts in the description. We've got our input shaft kit from Tuff Torq. We've got a new pulley from John Deere. So just take a note of how wobbly this is. All right, so pretty loosey-goosey. So let's take this apart. See if we can figure out where the slop is. So let's take this off. Let's put the new pulley on and see how loosey-goosey that is. Already a lot tighter. So it looks like most of the slop was actually in this pulley. It's not perfect, but it's a lot tighter than the old one. So maybe the defective part here is not so much the input shaft, but maybe it's the hardness or the material of this pulley. But anyway, it doesn't really matter because this thing's got to come off, right? So let's get this thing off. Doesn't really want to come off. That thing was a little tricky. I had to use these two bad boys and pry up on it. But it gave up the ghost. Now we'll take off this E-clip here. We'll try not to shoot it across the room. Wasn't so bad. And now we can work on our input shaft. So I'm guessing we have to take this seal out first. I guess it doesn't really matter. We could probably wreck the seal and not worry about it since we have a new one in the kit. Let's see if we can sneak a small screwdriver under there and pry it out. Again, I'm not going to go nuts trying not to damage the shaft because we're going to replace that shaft. Can we sneak this in here? Don't want to break this screwdriver. There we go. Not too tough. Looks like we have another E-clip. It'll give you a whole lot of room to get this clip out. clip is hitting the sidewall here. Messed it up pretty good. Hopefully they give us another one. Here's they do not, so we'll have to deal with that. What am I doing? I didn't need to remove this thing. That just anchors the bearing. There's a snap ring in there. Oh man, sorry, I've had a bit of a rough day today. Today is supposed to be my day off from work, but I ended up having to buy a new washing machine this morning. So that was fun. So pretend I didn't need to do that, because I didn't. So let's grab that snap ring out of there. I don't know if you guys can see it. It's right there and there. There we go. Okay, I see it, I think. Yep, I see it. It's on the other side of the tractor. I'll get that in a little bit. Now, in theory, this thing should pop right out. I did say in theory. Let's grab a pair of vice grips and maybe give it a tap. Let's see what we got over here. Vice grips. Again, we don't care about this shaft. We're replacing it. So I don't care if I mess it up. You would not want to do this if you were planning on reusing this shaft. It's coming. There we go. I don't know if you can see that, but things got a little bit out of alignment internally when I pulled that shaft out. So one of the little piston cups is actually aiming up here. So the splines of the shaft are actually all the way over here. So we got to angle them back in place. I think that this spring goes on here to keep some upward pressure on this thing. I'm going to coat this new shaft in oil. Here's some 15W50 oil in this little tub here. This is the same oil that we're going to put in the transmission once we're done with this procedure. Get it at Walmart or Amazon. It's just Mobile One 1550. Nothing terribly unusual. I think Tuff Torq recommends 5W50 now, but that's a little difficult to get. There we go. Now let me go get that snap ring. Put our snap ring in. Now it is important that you drain the oil out of this, or at least drain some of it out, because if you notice, the drain up here is higher, or the vent and the drain are higher than this here. So if the oil is filled all the way up to here and you take this seal out, guess what? Oil's coming out. So just keep that in mind. And this, of course, this spring came off, so I got to redo this. Okay, got it in. I had to adjust the swash plate's position while I was doing that. So now there's some upward pressure on this shaft. See that? It bounces up and down. Let's get our snap ring in there. Make sure we get it in the groove all the way around. We are good. Dump some more of this oil in there. Everything turns smoothly. Now we get to install our new seal. When I do these, I like to get a socket that's about the same outside diameter as the seal. So let me go dig up a socket and see what fits. Okay, in this case a socket is not going to work because the shaft is too long, so maybe we need a section of pipe. I'm going to try using a piece of copper pipe. Hopefully I don't regret that decision. Just putting some oil on the shaft, on the spline so nothing cuts the seal. Dunk the seal in oil. Let's work it down. Maybe it's the type of thing I can just push in by hand. That'd be kind of cool. Let me get a hammer so we can tap it in. I think this is 1-inch copper pipe. Need to move you guys back a little bit, sorry. The old seal was flush, so I'm just going to go flush on the new one. I think that'll do it. Got to reinstall that E-clip. Like so. Put that back on there. And we got to transfer the fan over, or I guess the bolts for the fan over. Let me go whiz these bad boys out. 10mm socket took care of those. We'll take off our fan, take out the bolts from the old hub. We'll transfer them over to the new. So they simply just drop in here. Let's get the fan out of its packaging. You don't always have to replace all these parts. I mean, you could just focus on the ones that are worn. But honestly, everything here is pretty well worn, so that's why I'm doing everything. So let's see, it was, how was it? Yeah, okay, so you can see from the marks here. So we just gotta line those up like so. Put our 10mm nuts back on. These were not too tight taken off, so I'm not going to go nuts tightening them. A little bit of oil in here, just for corrosion mitigation. Put that on. We have our top spacer here, and then our snap ring, and that should complete the installation of this shaft. There we go. So much more solid, as you can tell. I mean, there's almost no rock in this thing at all. So hopefully that solves the problem for a while. Coat everything in a little bit of oil. All right, so now we got to fill the transmission back up with oil since we drained it before. Take out this little plug here. Start glugging in some Mobil 1 1550. Does hold quite a bit. And there's also a gear case over here that you want to get lube into as well. We're getting there. Okay, that's good enough for now. You don't want to fill the oil to the tippy top because you got to leave room for thermal expansion as this oil heats up and as the air, well, the air isn't really going to get purged out of it per se. Well, if the air is going to get purged out, the oil level is going to go down, but you want to make sure you don't put too little, you don't put too much. So I like to spin the input shaft a bunch of times to helpfully purge some of the air out of the system. And you'll see air bubbles pop up here. So I'm going to do this for a little bit off camera until I feel like we got a lot of the air out of the system. Got things to the point where when I turn this input shaft, I can see the axle shafts turning ever so slightly, as they should. So if you watch this one here, you can see the keyway sneaking up on us. Little by little. Now the keyway is just about vertical. This just helps purge the air out of the system. There is a procedure you can follow when it's on the actual tractor to do that, but it's difficult to get the fluid level right unless you at least get most of the air out. So that's why I prefer to bench bleed it like this. You could probably rig up some kind of clever way to put a drill on here or something and spin it, not by hand, but this works fine too. Once you think you've done a good job there, put your filter strainer back in place. That prevents nastiness from the gear case over here from contaminating the hydrostatic portion. Put this spring in. Dump a little bit more oil in. I think that'll do it. Should be enough. Then we'll take our fill cap, clean it off real nice, and tap this back in place. All right, should be put back on the tractor now. And looking back, I think there's a couple things I forgot to mention throughout this procedure. One, there's an electrical connector on here, so make sure you take this off before you pull the trans, otherwise you will bend these pins or break something. Another thing to keep in mind is the fasteners on this side and this side are different lengths. This side is shorter, this side is longer. So just make sure you pay attention to that when you're going to reassemble things. So let's see, let's recap. We got the input shaft replaced, we got the oil changed, we got the transmission mostly cleaned up of any oil that I spilled. We bench primed it as best we could. You know, we got this thing turning, we could see the axle shafts turn, which is good. I think now it's time to put it back in the tractor. I'm not sure that there is a good way to do this and film it too. Maybe if you have two people, but I don't. So I'm just gonna try to manhandle this, and if you guys can see, great. If you can't, sorry. My back is hurting a little bit today, so Forgive me if I am acting like a bit of a sissy. Just trying to be gentle with it. How do I guess we'll get on the ground. Something I can put this thing on. No, it's a tire. Maybe I just need to suck it up and do it. So remember, when we get this thing in, we got to feed this hydraulic release lever through this hole. Just like that. Let's get a couple fasteners in here. All right, we got one on that side. The whole freaking tractor's moving. This is scary. Lesson learned, chock the front wheels. Okay, I got two fasteners holding it. Oh, that's not terribly fun. All right, now I'm gonna, well, let me move you around over here. I'm gonna hook up the link just before we get everything hard bolted in there. So we got this shift linkage over here. Probably should have taken the nut off of this before I fed it through, but like I said, lesson learned. We got it. Let's feed this through. This is where we needed our small wrench. Anybody remember what size socket that was? It was a 1/2 inch, like everything else on here. Got the front wheels chocked too, just to I don't kill myself. Okay, that's on. Now I think I'll go to the other side and get the parking brake hooked up. And if you recall, just one of these cotter pin things. So let's get this back aligned there. Washer on, our cotter pin. I mean, technically you shouldn't reuse these, but it's just a lawn tractor, not a race car. You definitely get away with it. All right, now we got to put the rest of the bolts in the transmission. Seems like we're hitting somewhere. Nope, we're good. Just getting the bolts for these stiffening braces on. And I'll do the other side off camera, you get the idea. That should do it. Now we can put our tires back on and make this setup a little bit less scary. So I think we had a washer that went on first, then a spacer on both sides. Washer and spacer. I'll hit them a little bit of fluid film because I took all the grease off of them. This is just a corrosion preventative. Hit the shaft too. Get a tire. Let's turn this so the keyway is facing up like that. Put our keyway in, our key stock in. Might actually be easier to put that in afterwards now that I think about it. Insert our keyway that way. Beautiful. And do the one on the other side exactly the same way. We'll put our E-clips on the wheels to hold them in place. Get a screwdriver to pop that in. Or pop it out. Does not want to go in there. I got it eventually. Now let's put these caps back on. We're going to use our heat gun again. Just like so. All right, got the tires to the ground. Got everything back together. Now I've got to put the belt on. I'm not going to film that for reasons that should be readily apparent, just because there's no space to do it. So we'll pick it up when we're ready to test it out. Got a little bit ahead of myself and bled it without filming it. Sorry about that. All you really got to do is jack up the rear end of the vehicle, and you want to use the motion control lever to alternate between reverse and forward a bunch of times with the hydraulic bypass pulled out, like that. All right, so do that a bunch of times. Do the exact same thing with it in. So if you do that for maybe do 10 cycles front to back with the lever out in bypass mode, and then 10 cycles front to back with the lever in, you should be good, give or take. But it works. I'll prove it to you, since you probably don't believe me. So yeah, not a horrible job, not a terribly fun one either. Honestly, I think the worst part of it was just dealing with that belt underneath. I'll give you a quick preview of what that routing looks like while the deck is still off. So this is the front engine side. All the way back to the transmission. It's unfortunate because a lot of these components in here have to come apart. Like you take the steering apart, you have to take the parking brake lock off temporarily just to get the belt into position, because there's a lot of stuff that the belt has to get around. So again, front to back, around the crank pulley. And this spring right here, that's a doozy. I actually cut myself pretty good trying it by myself with vice grips. The vice grip slipped and my hand hit something and sliced it open. So what I ended up doing is I called a friend, had him tied a rope around the hook here, and had him pull from the front of the tractor to basically do all the hard work while I just got it into position. That worked out nicely. So I think that's that. Now we got to put the deck back on. Can't remember if I mentioned it, but I did have to replace a couple of pulleys too. There was one right behind the transmission that was really loud, and there was one on the deck itself. You can see the shiny one over there. That one right there, I replaced that one too. Leave part numbers and links in the description if I can find them. With the deck, installation is pretty much the reverse of removal. Not a whole lot to it. Just labor. Yuck. You know what, I changed my mind. I think if you got this far in the video and the repair, you can probably get the deck back on, so I'm not gonna prolong this video any longer than is necessary. Like I said, installation of the deck is the reverse of removal. It's pretty straightforward, and if you got this far, you probably know how to do it. Anyway, hopefully you found this video helpful. If you have an issue with your Scott's S1642 or similar models with the Tuff Torq K51 transmission, I think the K46 is the same way, where that pulley has a lot of slop on the input shaft. You can replace both fairly inexpensively. It's a lot of labor, but you know, it's not that difficult. You can knock it out yourself in a couple hours. Anyway, if you found this video helpful, please subscribe, stay safe. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care.